that Joe Rogan had with Mike Benz. And Mike Benz has been on a lot of podcasts. He's a cybersecurity expert. He used to work for the State Department. And he talks about the deep state, or as he calls it, the blob, the history of it and how it basically took over not only foreign policy, but American policy. It's really interesting stuff. And it was an inspiring podcast that I really want to piggyback off of because I have some ideas of my own. And I think it's a really great baseline to understand what's going on. And I'm really excited about this live stream. This is the perfect live stream, one where I really get to just unpack what I'm thinking. And I'll give a little brief synopsis of the podcast for those who didn't hear it. God bless you guys. Dream Rare Podcast starts now. Thank you for being here.
It's the Dream Rare Podcast. Welcome to the show. The way to get the news at the desk or on the road. Let's go. God is great and success in our control. The world is crazy, but we get better from obstacles. Yeah.
What's going on Facebook? What's going on YouTube? What's going on Rumble? What's going on Apple Podcasts? What's going on Spotify? What's going on podcasters that listen somewhere else, or whoever you are, wherever you are? Thank you for being here, whatever time it is. Maybe it's live. I'm live right now. Maybe you hear this in a couple days. Maybe you hear it 5 years down the road. Who knows? That's the interesting thing about the internet. What's going on, Brooke? What's going on, Victoria? What's going on, Dog? Trisha? Give me thumbs up in the chat if everything looks and sounds good. Then I'm going to not pay attention to the chat because I really want to focus on what I'm talking about because I want to talk about history, our interpretation of history, the history we've been taught, and perhaps the history we haven't been taught, which I believe is really shaping the world that we live in. And I think the reason that so many people are so confused on the left, on the right, why did this happen? How did this happen? Who did this? When? Why? A lot of it kind of goes way further back than people realize. And I find it really interesting. If you could tell, I'm pretty excited to talk about it. I just want to get a thumbs up, make sure all the audio and everything sounds good. And then for those who are wondering, I'm very close to my final setup. I got a few more things to do. Within 2-3 weeks, I should have new background, better microphones. Everything's going to be higher level. I'm pretty pumped about it. But for now, we make do with what we have. And I'm grateful to be here. So Oklahoma snow day, that sounds fun. Go outside. Make sure you dress good, because then technically if you go outside and then you like freeze, you could be like, oh, that YouTuber told me to go outside and then I froze. So we got to really watch ourselves out here, liability wise. But okay, for those who didn't see it, or for those who did, I'm going to give a quick briefing of the podcast that I'm kind of piggybacking off of. Mike Benz worked for the State Department, has, in his own words, I only heard about him the last couple of years, he's been sounding the alarm on what he calls, the blob, which most people would call the deep state, which is the United States State Department apparatus, intelligence, unelected government that just stays there throughout decades. You can't vote your way out of it. And he really chronicles like when this started. He talked about USAID before everybody else was. And I just want to say, I really like the guy. I know there's mixed feelings. Some people think he doesn't go far enough. Other people think he's the be all end all because he, really explains it well. And I think what I like about Mike Benz before I start the podcast is he doesn't say more than he knows, and he doesn't come to like conclusions. Like he plays it very safe, and I don't mind that. I don't find it a bad thing. I think it's, everyone doesn't have to do everything. And I personally like people who are accurate. They make sure that what they're saying is true. And if they're not sure, then they don't go there. That's the kind of guy he seems like to me. He's very careful with his words. He's very accurate, and he doesn't go that far. Like he does go far into the knowledge of what he knows, but I really enjoy the guy. And I think that he's setting a really great baseline for an understanding of what's going on. I prefer people that are accurate and don't exaggerate. So I enjoy him quite thoroughly. And basically the point that he made is, as somebody who has worked for the government himself, he realized that the government wasn't just pushing propaganda and trying to control elections in other countries. Like they started doing that. He says at the start of Italy and Mussolini, like America, that's where he, from what I recall, he said that was the first time in his knowledge that America got involved in another election. They didn't want fascism and Mussolini to win. So they basically tried to get him out of power. I believe we're successful. I'd have to revisit that. But in general, he said that was the idea, was like, let's control elections overseas in order to benefit Americans. Let's make sure that we can dominate the world, and then you'll have cheaper maybe not taxes, but cheaper prices, better dollar, a better world for Americans. So although, still people that are non-interventionalists would not like that they were doing that, his thought process was like, okay, I'm not saying that's great, but that makes more sense than doing it domestically. At a certain point, the blob got so big trying to take over every other country that it also at one point didn't respect our sovereignty. So it's like, it's different doing it to Italy. It's different doing it to other countries than it is to basically then turn inward and be like, you shouldn't get to decide your president. So, this is a classic story of the deep state or the blob, as he calls it, getting so big that it turns inward and starts going after American citizens, which we all see, we all know is happening to some extent. And it's very clear that that is true to most extent. So that's my summary of like basically, all right, there's a car alarm going off. That's okay. That's a summary of basically what he was talking about. And he chronicles it quite thoroughly. So if you want to listen to the podcast, it's a great listen. What I wanted to do is I wanted to piggyback on top of it and start looking at certain points of history he was talking about and asking ourselves the question, like, was this justified then? Was it a good idea? And did it lead to the world that we live in now? But first, I want to take a sip of coffee. Well, actually, it's an Americano because I'm so American. I only drink American flavored drinks, American name drinks. Gulf of America. I just scooped this out of the Gulf of America. I'm just gulping it down. I'm just kidding. It's an Americano. Stop. Relax, guys. It's just a joke. Chill. Here, let me do this real quick. Hold on. All right. Just had to make sure you guys are still there. So what I wanted to start with was when he said that the first time the blob or the deep state got involved in foreign elections, it was Mussolini. I'm not the biggest expert on that time. I understand Mussolini was a nationalist. He was a fascist. I don't believe he was the founder of fascism, but I think he was definitely one of the more prominent or one of the earlier ones. But correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Let me know. What we were told throughout history, and I think what most people believe, is that it was good that America fought these guys. It was good that America overthrew them. I don't know that everybody knows that America literally got involved in their country to try to get rid of them, but we do know that we fought them at some point and we opposed them. And most people say that was awesome, right? That's great. We had to get rid of fascism. We had to get rid of this dictator in order to spread democracy. Now in the current world, all I'm saying is people realize what the word democracy really means to the Washington Post and the New York Times and the deep state and the rhinos and the Democrats. Democracy pretty much means the opposite of democracy. If they can't control an election, they call you a dictator. If they can't control an election, they call you Russian. You're this, you're that, you're a bigot, you're a fascist, you're a Bernie bro, or you get what I'm saying? They smear all sides of the equation if they can't control the outcome. So I figured out, I think that a republic, a democracy, the people's choice, I think it's a great system. There's arguments that it's not, but in general, my whole life, I've believed it is fair that we get to decide and vote our way out of certain things. Then you come to the conclusion that you actually can't. And the people that want to spread democracy overseas, they don't even want democracy here. So it's like in Ukraine, they're not really having elections right now because they're at war. That's not a democracy. What if Biden declared war and said, well, we're at war, Trump can't get in because I'm the president? Israel, you can't oppose what they're doing when it comes to their Gaza policy, because if you do in Israel, there's a cost. Haaretz is the oldest Israeli publication in Israel, literally the oldest one. And they're getting sanctioned and really attacked and targeted by the government because they're not just spewing exactly what the government wants. A teacher got arrested for questioning certain events over there. So it's like, this is not democracy as we know it, or this is not the American way and the freedom. That whole freedom shtick is really just a shtick. Not only does it not apply to our allies, like Ukraine is basically just a puppet state for the Western world. Like that's what Ukraine is. They installed a puppet leader. The entire thing is basically at behest of us so we can do what we want in Eastern Europe. And it doesn't matter if they have an election or not. We don't care about the election. We care about the outcome. So what I'm trying to say is everything that I'm witnessing now is a lie. But then I'm told you're being lied to by the left. You're being lied to by the right. You're being lied to by them. You're being lied to by the media. You're being lied to by the liberal professors. But history is totally true, but that it's just a lie now. They just started lying to us decades. Maybe that's absolutely true. But here's what I'm saying with Italy. Regardless, and this goes back to Mike Benz saying that's the first time the American blob or deep state intervened into another country, according to his research. We're told that that was great that we intervened. My question is, was it really? Because I'm not saying I agree with their entire system, but at the end of the day, this is what I figured out about World War II and that period as well. And then after, we base, and this is not justifying anybody. I'm just being honest. We sided with the communists. We sided with the globalists. We sided with the people who were not nationalists, who didn't have a national identity, or did, now they don't. And it's like at this point, it's like you look at Italy. Italy let in a bunch of migrants, and then right wingers complained about it, and then they elected that lady, whatever her name is, Maloney, right? Germany is arresting people because of hate speech online. Germany is, going after people who insult other people in public. It's a crime to literally speak in Germany currently. France is falling apart. Everybody talks about it. UK is worse than it was 30 years ago. It's more dangerous. People are getting stabbed all the time. Sweden has bomb attacks. I mean, you can go through all of Europe and you look at it, and most people, left wing or right wing, would come to the conclusion that it's just not as good as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And this is what I'm trying to say without justifying anything that happened, because that's not what I'm trying to do. We sided with certain world leaders that killed tens of millions of people. So, the talking point is like, well, those leaders were really bad. Mussolini was bad. Yes, sure. But when we did all these things, it led to basically a Western world where everybody hates themselves, where nobody has any sort of national belief or cohesion to the extent where they're just letting themselves fall apart and become a crappier version of what they were 10, 20 years ago. I just found it interesting that Mike Benz referenced Italy and Mussolini, because it's not my biggest, I know a lot about history, but I haven't fully studied that. I think I'll definitely do it at some point this year, next year. But, I'm not an expert on it and all sides of that equation. But here's what I'll say is like, that's when we started intervening. And this is what they tell us in history is like, we intervened in Italy and it was a good thing. We did World War I, we did World War II, we helped these people, we teamed up with Stalin, we teamed up with China, we created the UN and the EU and all of these sort of European agreements. And, we beat the bad guys and we worked with the other bad guys to beat the bad guys. And now we have the United Nations and the World Health Organization that was started by our literal communist allies after World War II. And this is all good and everything's good, except it's not good because everybody in America, whether you're left wing or right wing, thinks it's worse. You have Europe, most people think it's declining. So it's like, I just find it fascinating. And this is all I'm trying to say. I don't know if it's coming across this way, or I'm trying to be very careful, because when you talk about these topics, if you misspeak, they try to ruin your life forever and make sure you can never make money in this country. Even though we have the freedom of speech, unlike Germany, unlike UK, unlike Australia, unlike Canada, you have the freedom of speech to not get arrested. You don't really have freedom of speech. You have like freedom of watch what you say or else we could close your banks. Watch what you say or else we'll attack your advertisers and make sure you can't work anywhere. Watch what you say or else you can never get a media appearance. You can't get invited to this and that. And it's like, how is that freedom? It's like during COVID. It's like, yeah, you're not in jail, but you can't go to a sports game. You can't go to your doctor's office without doing what they say. You can't get, in some cases, like a kidney transplant or a liver transplant if you don't get the vaccine. Yeah, you're not going to jail, but it's like, it's not really, you're not like free to do it. You're basically like your whole life is going to be in a box, which is similar to prison. If you misstep or take an unpopular opinion about something. COVID was like a masterclass of how they do that. But in general, when it comes to him saying we started in Italy, I just found it fascinating, because it's like, okay, that was the start of us basically overthrowing nationalists and replacing them with puppets who don't like their country. And you don't have to be a fan of a fascist in order to understand, if you replace somebody that has, likes their nation with somebody that's working for a foreign blob, they don't have loyalty to their country. And this is not saying that I wanted him in power forever. It's just like, they deserve to have a sovereign country. They deserve to have elections. If they want that leader, they want that leader. It should be up to that country, not the American deep state, to run around the world overthrowing every other leader. So I've believed this for a long time, but even listening to Mike Benz talk about what America has done over the last couple decades, and then they've turned it inward, it's like an entity where they wanted to stop leaders around the world from getting there. And then they turned inward and said, you know what, we're going to do this to America too. That's when Mike Benz had a problem with it. And he's like, wait, it makes sense to do it overseas, but it doesn't make sense to do it to your own people. You can't do that to America, because then America's not America. And the truth is, it's really that the same thing that we're witnessing here is what's going on all over the world. It's like Ukraine, that puppet was established. If Iraq chooses a leader that doesn't play ball with America, Israel, and our allies, they get replaced. They get attacked. The military goes in and kills them. Gaddafi. You look at all these leaders, and it's like anybody who opposes the blob or the deep state or the global, new world establishment order that has organized over the last 40 to 100 years, they get replaced. And it's like, it's the same thing with the United States of America. They're controlling both sides, where it's like, you can be a rebel sort of, but not really, but kind of. And it's like, even with Trump, he's not perfect. And he's definitely, in my opinion, he does play ball. That's why he's there. He does play ball. That's why he had all the mega tech donors donating to him, because he's not really that big of an outsider. But at the same time, to give Trump credit, he also kind of is. That's why certain people hate him. It's like, he's not completely playing ball on Ukraine. They want somebody like Adam Kinzinger. They don't want Tulsi Gabbard, for that matter. People were like, she plays ball too. Yes, but not as much ball as Lindsey Graham. If they had it their way, everybody would be like Lindsey Graham or Adam Kinzinger or Mike Pence. They wouldn't have any Tulsi Gabbards. They wouldn't have any Thomas Masseys. They wouldn't have any Tulsi Gabbards. That's not what they want. They don't want someone who plays ball 50% of the time. They want someone who plays ball 100% of the time. And in other countries, it's way easier for them to accomplish that. In America, they were like, oh, the First Amendment's getting in our way. Freedom is like there's literally people that go on television and say the First Amendment's getting in our way in America because they're doing what Mike Benz explained. I just, once again, before I move on, I find it interesting that that's what when we started, according to him. I don't know if that's really the number one thing. He said in Italy, they interfered in those elections, and there's all documents to prove that, he says, which there probably is. That's a great thing about America too, by the way. If you're really interested in what's going on and you don't want to just listen to some talking head, we live in a country that declassifies, not everything, but a lot. And there is a lot of like FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, and all these sort of things where like everything is public. Someone said today on my page, they were like, we need a Doge for politicians and Republicans and Democrats. And it's like, we don't need Doge. We have a Doge for that. Like you can tell who Trump's biggest donors are. It's right there. You just don't want to look at it. You could tell who's paying Lindsey Graham. It's all transparent. It's all public. So it's like we don't actually even need a Doge of politicians because we have a Doge of politicians. It's just everybody's so emotionally invested in the story of like left versus right that they're not willing to look at their own side and realize that their own side's pretty much working with the other side. But, without getting too much into that, this is the question that I have for people. And it's a hard one to ask because they're always going to try to misconstrue what you're saying or make it seem more extreme than it is. But it's like we've basically gone around the world and we've tried to, for the last 40, 50 years, including the last 10, 20 years, our blob or our intelligence apparatus or deep state or State Department or whatever you want to call it, it seems like they hate leaders they can't control. And it seems like they hate leaders who prioritize their own people. Like they're running around the world. Oh, Ukraine, put that guy there. Italy, put that guy there. France, put that guy there. And then if anyone comes around that actually has the interest of the people of that country, then they try to run propaganda against them or run a puppet president against him. They hate anyone they can't control. And then the original thing that they told us, they were doing this for American interests, right? We're doing this to help us. We're doing this to make our dollar stronger, okay? But look at America. The same people doing that to France, the same people doing this to Germany, the same people doing this to Ukraine, and, the same people doing this to the UK, and, insert country here. Poland has that new Tusk leader, or whatever his name is, Donald Tusk. That guy seems like a total globalist, but in general, the same people doing that to them are doing the same thing here. So it's hard to come to the conclusion, if you're smart, to be like, oh, they're doing that to everyone else for our interests. They flood them with migrants. They flood us with migrants. They want to liberalize Poland. They want to liberalize America. They want to brainwash, young women in college. They want to do that here. The same tactics to destroy these countries, they're doing it here at all costs. It's like they just want power at all costs. They don't care what happens to America. They just want to stay in control. And this is the tricky part about talking to people about this, because most Republicans, even now, they'll say, yeah, I don't like that George Soros is interfering in elections. Yeah, I don't like that the Democrats. Yeah, I don't like this and that. But then if you talk about history, they believe everything that they were ever told, because you pretty much have to. It's like it's so taboo to like question anything in history, because it's also a crime in dozens of countries. And in America, your life is like, if you question the wrong part of history in America, you really don't have freedom. Like you won't be able to keep any job. You'll get doxxed. Like they will literally try to do everything they can to destroy your life. And then in other countries, you get like arrested and thrown in jail. The biggest speech law that is persistent all over the Western world is that there's a certain part of history that you absolutely can't even go near, can't question anything about it, not anything, right? And even me talking about this is kind of difficult to do, because even explaining accurately to people that is happening, it makes it look like, oh, what's he doing? Should we ruin his life? Should we write 15 articles about him? Should we dox him again? Should we call him an anti-Semite? Like it's like that's the world we live in. We live in that world order of, yes, this is happening, but don't even talk about it. Don't even say it. Don't even mention this. Don't even report on it, because if you report on it, it will ruin your life. I've reported on edgy things, conspiracy theories, whatever, for 7 years. The first time that I got bad press, besides COVID, a little bit of bad press, was when I mentioned that Trump has Zionist donors. As soon as I said that, articles start flying all over the place, being like, anti-Semite, anti-Semite, anti-Semite. Oh my gosh, he's talking about foreign aid, anti-Semitism. Okay. Relax, calm down. Okay, I forgot. I'm not supposed to. Okay, that's the world we live in. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to say it, but it's like, I'm not saying that Italy had the greatest leader in the early 1900s. I'm not making that claim. But what I am saying is America runs around and overthrows leaders. And then look at the world now. We're living in a world where that happened. And, with World War II, it's like we teamed up with the communists and then created the UN. And then like Republicans are like, I can't believe this happened to me. I've always liked Ronald Reagan. No offense, but Ronald Reagan kind of sucked too. He was an actor, so he was like very likable. But Ronald Reagan, if you look at all the stuff he did, he really was kind of a puppet. With that being said, it's like, I don't know. We're living in as Daryl Cooper tried to say, and they tried to ruin his life because he went on Tucker Carlson's podcast. I mean, maybe he made some claims that were a little overstepping or whatever, but we're living in the world order of the last time we all fought. It's like this is what we live in. You team up with communists, you team up with people that have zero nationalism and demonize nationalism, you get what you get. That this is what's going on. And it's still true to this day. Like I have no dog in the race with Russia and Ukraine. Like, I'm not Ukrainian, I'm not Russian. I have no hate in my heart. So whether it's Israel, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine, I just look at it through the lens of an American who's honest. And it's like Russia is conservative. Russia is not completely controlled by NGOs. Russia has men that are men, and they have traditional gender roles and like everything that Catholics and Christians used to do 40 years ago in this country. And that's a problem with the blob. The blob wants to, make everybody, it's like, oh, you're not pushing this, you're not pushing that. When we started, funding Ukraine got gayer. Look at what Doge is uncovering. All the things that they're doing, they're running around the world trying to liberalize the world, because liberalizing the world destroys the world. Liberalizing a country destroys the country. And when you destroy a country, it's easier to establish a puppet president. When you have a strong nation that has nationalism, it's not easy to infiltrate, especially if they're not willing to let in Western NGOs. And that's what we do. We go to every country that's not completely ruined and we try to ruin them. So of course, a lot of the world's not going to like us. And some of the world doesn't like us for different reasons because they're so propagandized. They like right now, how I see it with the left and the right is there's so much propaganda, so much left-wing propaganda, so much fake opposition, right-wing propaganda. People's brains are scrambled and like no one can function. It's like the left's mad at the right, the right's mad at the left. And I'm just looking at everybody. It's like 95% of people are wrong, but they're too egotistical to even realize it. So what's the point of even arguing with people? Like, it's like liberals have been brainwashed 55 times and it's like pretzeled and they're like, oh my gosh, you voted for Trump. And then you talk to like right wingers and they're like, I don't care what gender you are, as long as you vote for Trump. It's like, okay, that was a bad example of right winger, but you get what I'm saying. It's like nobody understands anything. And it's like, you can't, because you can't understand. It's like if you're in liberal media and you start understanding things, you're going to lose your job. You don't want to understand. If you're a news host like Shaq or Stephen A. Smith, and you realize that the, mandatory vaccinations are insane, it pays to not notice. If you're in Republican media and you come to the conclusion that like everything is funded by a certain type of donor and they're basically doing it at the expense of America and they're prioritizing something else over, you can't be on Fox News. You can't be on Newsmax. You're not invited. You'll get banned from Turning Point. Like there's a no-go zone for everybody. And that's why nobody wants to really think about it or talk about it. But I don't know how else to really say this. I'm trying to be as politically correct as possible and also as honest as possible. It's like, we teamed up with the communists. We've been running around nations for 100 years, destroying them purposely, and told that it helps us. But now that it's 2025, it's pretty obvious that the same tactics that they've done to destroy those nations, they're doing to our nation. So then you got to ask yourself, why is this happening? Mike Benz doesn't really get into everything because he's just doing what he knows, which is awesome. Like, is it being done purposely? Is it being done mistakenly? Do they do this because they're trying to fight fascism and they're trying to fight bad leaders and they're trying to help? I don't think so, but maybe. Are they doing it just because they're power hungry and they just want to maintain power at all costs, like the king who destroys an entire village just to keep his own crown for a day? Maybe. I mean, that's definitely possible. For me, though, I don't have limits to like what I'll research and look at because I'm not afraid of information I disagree with. I've come to the conclusion, and I could prove it, that it's being done in some cases that way, but in many cases it's being done purposely. The same way that America will destroy a country for its own benefit. Do you think that we would destroy a country to benefit us or our foreign policy, but no one else would? No other country would do that. No other group of people would purposely destroy America for their own interests. Like there's so many games being played. And in politics, I think the games are like, everybody's so passive aggressive and fake. You have these unholy alliances of people who don't even like each other, who have two separate agendas, but yet they're doing the same thing because they think it's going to lead to a better outcome for them. I'll give you an example on this. And I know this might bother some people, but it's a great example. When you look at Zionism, you could look at Jewish Israeli Zionists and you could look at Christian Zionists. And Christian Zionists in America are like, we're the greatest allies. Oh my gosh, don't say any, like literally, like they think it's their religion to defend Israel and Jewish people to any extent. And they think it's like literally their religion to like worship them, where it's like you criticize Donald Trump and our government and our Republicans, yet with their government, you like never even thought to think anything. Like you're literally just like drooling out of your mouth. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to get to the core of it. It's like, what do Christian Zionists think is going to happen at the end? They think it's revelation, and they think that Jewish people in Israel who do not convert to Christ and convert to be Christians are going to go to hell. So it's like your greatest ally doesn't believe in your God. In many cases, they don't like him. There's a book that says he's boiling in poop, but you're not allowed to talk about that because, of course, that's hate speech or whatever. It's like, I'm not saying everyone believes it, but it is in the Talmud. With all that being said, it's like, okay, they don't even like what you like, and you think they're going to hell. So it's like this unholy alliance of Israeli Zionists who are like, in my opinion, God bless everybody. I don't care. Do what's best for your nation and your people. It makes sense. But it's like they're doing what's best for them. They're like, yeah, if these people will literally worship us, then let's just do whatever we need to do. And the Christians are like, you're our greatest ally, except you're going to go to hell at the end. But you're our greatest ally, but you don't even believe in our God. But you're our greatest ally, but I think I'm going to heaven and you're going to hell. But it's like they know that you think that, so they're just using you, as they should, because it's like, what else are you going to do? Like, why would you not try to get your way and do what you want and expand your nation and take land and defend yourselves and get free taxpayer money and call everybody else anti-Semitic when they notice? Like, yeah, that's what's happening. But that's the whole world of like neocon and deep state establishment. It's filled with people who are friends who probably hate each other, who are doing things for different reasons. Some politicians will take $100 million from a donor and then call you anti-Semitic for noticing. Some politicians take millions of dollars and then freak out at everybody. It's like, why do you have to take money if you believe in it so much? You can't just believe in it. You need $5 million. Like, if you believe in the vaccine so much, yeah, you need to get paid off by the pharmaceutical industry. So it's like the whole establishment is filled with these like weird, unholy alliances where they just are so passive aggressive fake to each other, or they're so obsessed with money and power and being popular that they've basically lied to themselves about these topics. And, you know, it's easy to lie to yourself about these topics because it's one of the most censored topics to talk about. So you can literally just call the opponents of your topic anti-Semitic and pass speech laws and just say, oh, it's just all the hateful people just hating me so much. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you could say that because there are hateful people, but, you know, there's other things going on. I posted a story yesterday. I mean, this is kind of like not related, but I just thought of it. There was a story in Miami Beach where an Israeli guy thought he saw Palestinians and he tried to shoot them and kill them. And he told the police, I just killed 2 Palestinians. And then the people who got shot were not Palestinian. They were actually Israeli. And then apparently, according to reports, they posted on their Facebook page, death to Arabs, and they said that they got shot by Arabs. So it's like some Israeli guy just shot 2 Israeli guys in Miami Beach thinking they were Palestinians. And then the guys said it was Arabs, even though it was an Israeli guy. It's like, that's a crazy story. I mean, that's like New York City tunnel level crazy story. And it's like, I talk about it, people are like, oh, you're just anti-Semitic. Oh, you just hate. That's a crazy story. If Palestinians did that, I would post it too. 2 Palestinians shooting Palestinians in Miami Beach. I'm just saying, I don't care if it's Ukraine. I don't care if it's Russia. I don't care if it's Israel. I don't care if it's Palestine. Keep the war in your country. If you're like so war that you're just shooting random people, including your own race, like, you know, like go back to your country and fight the war there. Don't shoot people in America. But is that hate speech to say that? But it's hard for us to say it because we're funding all these wars. We're funding Israel. And if you want to stop, they call you anti-Semitic. The press calls you anti-Semitic. Republicans who take donor money call you anti-Semitic. The Democrats call you anti-Semitic to some extent. If you say you want to stop funding Ukraine, they call you Russian. They call you Putin. They call you all these sort of names. It's like this trap where you're not even allowed to have an opinion. But it's like, it's a crazy story. Back to what I was talking about. This is the conclusion that I'm coming to, that I don't know, like I'm trying to figure out how to really say it, but it's like people think America and boomers think, no offense to boomers, but that generation, they think I got lied to the last 10 and 20 years. And it was just the millennials and the Zoomers and the bloomers or whatever everybody's called. And, you know, I grew up in a great time and it was awesome. But now it's really bad. And, you know, like the lies just came in the last 10, 20 years. And Trump is the truth. You know, that's what most boomers think. I like Trump. I voted for him. I'm just saying that's a cope. You know, you were lied to your whole life. You fumbled the bag. You had the greatest America. You let it fall apart. And just like COVID stimulus checks, the decline does not happen instantaneously. It's Trump. It's Biden. It's the fact that we printed all the money and nobody cared until now. And then they blame each other, although Democrats are worse. It's the same thing with boomers. It's like you had the greatest country in the world and you let it fall apart for 50 years. And then once it fell apart, you want to just find a quick, easy blame for it and be like, oh, it's just this one thing that happened there. No, Reagan lied to you. In my opinion, they lied about Nixon. Nixon was the last probably semi-non-controlled president, and they kicked him out of office for it. And it's like, since then, JFK got shot and killed. I'm not even 100% sure why that happened, but clearly he was doing something. But it's like, this is not some new phenomenon that just happened that Trump's going to fix. Sure, Trump can do things, and I think he's doing a pretty good job. But it's like boomers don't want to realize like their whole life is a lie. They believed everything that they've ever been told. And then they just figured out 10, 20 years ago that something went awry. But it's all the result of everything that happened. And I'm not justifying other world leaders in the past. I'm not justifying any war, any death, anything. I would never do that. With that being said, the truth is like America has been overthrowing leaders that were nationalists for decades and replacing them with puppets. If you do that to 20 to 30 countries, you get the world that we live in. Look, it's like, it doesn't matter who's in office now. I mean, Trump is definitely helping with the Doge and exposing stuff, but they've been making the world liberal for 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years now. And every involvement we've ever had has led to this moment. You know, Daryl Cooper tried to talk about this, and they like, dude, they went crazy on him. But, you know, he was saying Winston Churchill was the ultimate villain of World War II. I get why that's controversial, because Winston Churchill is supposed to be the good guy, or at bare minimum, like, he's not supposed to be the worst guy. You know, if you say that, that's crazy to a lot of people. Like, half the world's going to be pissed off at you. And I don't know enough about World War II to come to that conclusion. So I'm not agreeing with him. But what I am saying is, you know, that pokes a hole in the narrative. If you like, why would Winston Churchill be bad? He beat all these people. And then Tucker Carlson says, you know, I forget what he said. He said, like, Winston Churchill blew it. Look at the UK now. It's like a slave state. Like, clearly he didn't help you guys. And then, you know, the opposition of that would say, well, it's not Winston Churchill's fault. He did a good thing. And then, you know, 20 years later, 10 years later, someone else got in power and destroyed it. It's definitely possible. Once again, I'm not speaking in absolutes that I can't prove. I'm not going to do that. But what I will say is, like, you think he was great, and then 60 years later, they destroyed England. Maybe. What if he paved the way to destroy England? What if, you know, our leaders 70 years ago, 80, 90 years ago, 100 years ago, paved the way to destroy our country now? An example of this in America that's less controversial somehow is the Federal Reserve. Like, if you talk to libertarians or people that are against inflation and really research it, most people will say that started in 1913 when they replaced our money with the Federal Reserve. And then they went away from gold standard eventually. And then they started printing more and more money. And it's like, yeah, COVID didn't help. There was a bank crash during Obama. Like, there's all these like ups and downs of it. But a lot of people trace it back to 1913, where it's like, if you know, at that point, it's a sinking ship. It's just taking a long time to sink. I kind of believe that as well. I think that probably was the moment that America was doomed to some extent to inflation. And a lot of people think that inflation is going to go away because Trump's in office. And even the liberal press is now pointing it out. Eggs are still higher. And, you know, Republicans will be like, Trump just got there, which is true. You got to give them some time. But here's what people don't understand. Inflation's not going away. You're never getting, like, think about my grandfather. It's like he worked and made like $10,000 or $20,000 a year, but a house cost $5,000, $10,000. A car cost $400. It's like you could buy a house and a car with a year's salary, a nice house with a yard, a nice car in a safe neighborhood with under a year's salary. Now you need 5 years of salary just to get out of the hood. Like, we don't live in the same world, and we're never going back there. And we're never going back there because inflation didn't come from Trump or Biden. It came from the Federal Reserve. It came from getting away from the gold standard. It came from the money printing. It comes from the foreign aid that we give to Israel and Ukraine and all over the world. It comes from the fact that they push omnibus bills every year. It comes from the fact that we spent trillions of dollars during COVID. And what I think is happening, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe politicians are so corrupt that they don't even know what they're doing. But I think of it as like, imagine a house is burning in the Pacific Palisades, or a ship is sinking. People are just looting it before it leaves. You remember the looters in the Pacific Palisades? And it's like, how could somebody do that? Yeah, it's horrific. But in their head, I'm not justifying it, but in their head, they realize that this stuff is burning and the government's not allowing people to go there because it's dangerous, and they're risking it. Like, why not just loot this house before it burns? Or why not just loot this ship before it burns? A pirate comes on board, takes the things, and then that's what they're probably doing to the country. They're just taking as much money as they possibly can while the ship's sinking. It's just like, screw it. Trillions, print, whatever, you know. But I'm just saying it started 100 years ago. And my thought is, Trump's not going to beat inflation. If anything, it's going to go down a little bit. We're never going back to how it was post-COVID. Never. Like, this is what, I'm sorry to be so passionate, but this is what annoys me about people. During COVID, I understand supply chains. I understand the money supply. I was like really freaking out, you know, because I was like, we're done. Like, this is so bad. I just knew how bad it was. And everybody I talked to is like, oh, it's whatever. It's just a couple of weeks. It's just a couple of months. It's whatever. I'm like, I'm going to be poor the rest of my life. Like, we're going to be poor. I'm not saying I'm poor, but you get what I'm saying. Like, I'm going to be more poor than I was. So are you. Everyone is. But it's like we're toast for at least a decade. Like, at least till 2030 we're toast just on what they did in 2020. And then they kept doing it till 2022. Like, you don't care about the lockdown, but then everybody wants to complain about inflation. It's like, you can only complain about this inflation if you were there from day one saying, open up, Trump, open up, Trump, open up, Trump, open up, open up. If you didn't do that, you're like, oh, it's Joe Biden. It's not Joe Biden. It's not going back. Oh, give Trump a few months. For what? Do you think we're going back to my grandfather's world where a house costs $10,000? An ice cream cone costs a nickel? No, everything's going to cost more and more and more and more. And it's never going back unless they have some sort of radical shift in the banking supply, or we hit hyperinflation and, move on. I don't think we will. I hope not. But, I'm not a pessimist or a doomer, but it's like, do people not understand inflation? Like, when have we ever gone back? When have we ever, maybe like after the Great Depression or something? But, maybe. With that being said, everything happens for a reason. Nobody knows the reason. So with history, I've thought this for a long time, but it's hard to say. It's like we teamed up with a guy who killed over 10 million people in a communist country that we now hate. And then we started the UN with them. And now that Russia is not communist, we hate them. It's like, it kind of seems like we're the communists. It kind of seems like we're the globalists. You understand what I'm saying? It's like Russia's communist. We work with them. Now Russia is not communist and we're mad at them. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're mad at every country. It's like now we're allies with, countries in Europe, and there's no freedom, no nationalism. Like, we sucked the life out of this entire continent. I don't know. And I guess you're not supposed to notice or talk about it, because if you do, like Tucker Carlson says, they start exaggerating about you and saying that you're denying parts of history when you're literally just analyzing it and being like, okay, we overthrew Mussolini and then it led to a bunch of liberal politicians who like flood their country with migrants. I'm not saying he would be better, or even he wouldn't even be alive, but it's like, where would they be if we didn't do that? I don't know. Where would we be if we didn't do that 50 times throughout history? I have no idea, but I've noticed that pattern. I call the globalist cabal or whatever, I call it the liberal gay world order, because they go all over the world and just try to make them gay. Like, Charlie Kirk is standing against the LGBTQ in America, but Charlie Kirk is like, Palestine doesn't have pride parades. You like pride parades now, Charlie Kirk? Like, weren't you just complaining about you complain about a pride parade in San Francisco, and then you're getting all pissy for your donors and trying to brainwash Republicans into thinking Palestine needs pride parades as they're getting bombs dropped on their head? It's like, why do they need pride parades? Does Iraq need to be gayer? Is that the problem? We're building schools in Afghanistan. What kind of schools are we building? We don't even like our own schools. Our own education has plummeted. They're turning kids in, telling kids at like 7 years old that they're a different gender. It's like 80% of 20 to 30-year-old girls are completely brainwashed and need like psychiatric help. Those aren't definite numbers. I'm just saying, like, the amount of mental illness and like literal depression, and like they're scrambling people's brains. Especially women get scrambled more than men on average, I think, in college, but men too. And then it's like their whole world is a lie. And then they go and get like mental help because they need help, because you just ruin their life. And it's like, that's what our schools are doing. Oh, but we're building schools in Afghanistan. What kind of schools? What are we doing in Ukraine? We go to Ukraine gets gayer. Ukraine starts passing LGBTQ laws that Lindsey Graham complains about in America, but Lindsey Graham wants to fund Ukraine. Russia rejects all of that. They're one of the only countries in Eastern Europe. Name a country in Eastern Europe that's not destroyed, and you could find an enemy of the United States of America and our allies. Poland was one of the only countries that isn't and wasn't destroyed, and they somehow got Donald Tusk in there. I guarantee you, Donald Tusk is a Western puppet. Donald Tusk is sent to destroy Poland and make Poland like every other country. It's like, that's what we've been doing. I call it the liberal gay world order. We want everyone to be liberal and gay. Oh, the Muslims aren't gay and liberal enough, says the Republican who doesn't even want that in America. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense when you realize that these people are out of control. The same people destroying America are destroying the world. And you're just not supposed to notice, or you're not supposed to trace it in history. You're supposed to be like, it just happened 10 years ago. It just happened 5 years ago when Bill Ackman figured it out and started donating to Trump. It didn't though. Like I don't know how else to say, but it didn't. That's not what happened. To summarize, Mike Benz does a brilliant job tiptoeing around explaining the history of that. I think it's a really interesting listen. And he said that, the United States started creeping around the world 100 years ago now, or close to 100 years ago. It started, he says, with Italy. I don't know if that's true, but it started there. Then it went there. Then it went there. And since then, we've been doing all this stuff everywhere. And then he said at one point it turned inward. And that's when he had a problem with it, which is fair. It's like if you're doing all the State Department stuff, or we're doing propaganda for foreign countries. Once they start turning the propaganda inward, once they start trying to control elections inward, that's the inversion. And then the people trying to control every election are telling you that you're the conspiracy theorist, or you're questioning, elections is dangerous for a democracy. It's all inversion. It means they're trying to control the entire outcome, and you wanting your own outcome with your vote is a threat to their control. Here's another thing when it comes to hate speech, right? And this goes for, I'm sorry, but racism, sexism, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, climate denialism, anti-vaxxer, like name every hate speech in the world, right? That they say is hate speech. Here's the thing. Some people are hateful, right? There's certain people that agree with me on some things that I can't stand because I don't like certain people. With that being said, what is hate? Hate is perceived by everyone individually. You can perceive the truth as hate speech. You could perceive someone who loves you as hate speech. If you're like a crackhead and you're like, yo, stop doing crack, you could think I hate you. Oh, you're hating on me. You could try to improve someone's life. Hey, let's work out together. Oh, are you saying I'm fat because you're self-conscious? You could literally perceive love as hate. You could perceive truth as hate. You could perceive facts as hate. So this is why hate speech isn't even a real thing. With that being said, let's just say someone is actually hate something. Let's just say your country's being flooded with migrants that hate you. I'm not saying this is happening in your country, but let's just say there's migrants who literally hate your country, hate your people, are going to be a net negative, and they're flooding your country. If you hate that, what's the bigger story? The fact that you hate it, or the fact that it's happening, right? I'm not a hateful person, but isn't the bigger story the fact that it's happening, not the person who hates what's happening? Say somebody robbed you 50 times and you said, I hate that person. I hate that person. And then they're working with a crime organization. I hate that person and I hate that group because they robbed me. Oh, that's hate speech. You're not allowed to hate them. Sure, I guess. But isn't the bigger story that guy got robbed by that person 50 times, 20 times? Isn't the bigger story that person got robbed by a global crime syndicate 50 times? But in the world, they punish the person who notices. They say, that's just hateful that you notice. That's just so hateful. It's just so hateful. It's so much hate speech. I can't believe you hated it. Oh my gosh. The bigger story is the fact that it's happening, not the fact that somebody pointed it out. And that's what people don't understand about hate speech. Republicans pretend to understand it, but then they call everything anti-Semitic, which is just a word for hate speech, which has a global definition, which has a definition on the State Department. And the definition is so broad that the United States State Department called India anti-Semitic for saying that George Soros was funneling money into their country to control elections. And they put out some sort of image about it. And they said, that's a classic anti-Semitic image. You're just being hateful. And that's classic anti-Semitism. India is pro-Israel. They're probably the most pro-Israel country in the world, if not besides the United States of America. India loves Israel on average. India is an ally of Israel. But now they're anti-Semitic because they noticed a Jewish guy is funneling money into their elections, or they claim that he was, because they shared a cartoon that people don't want to see because it reminds them of the past. I mean, I'm not so when Republicans call people anti-Semitic, they don't even realize that definition includes a PR team for George Soros, so deep that the United States State Department is willing to call foreigners anti-Semitic for talking about George Soros. Yet people are still throwing around that world where it's like you're hateful for noticing that he's influencing elections, not the fact that he's the story is not that he's influencing elections. The story is that you noticed and had the gall to share a cartoon about it. That was just so hateful. This is what the word hate speech means in all forms. It's like, I don't like hateful people. I'm not hateful. I don't hate any country. I don't like people will tell me I'm hateful when they're literally hateful. It's like inversion. When it comes to Israel and Palestine, and when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, I don't hate Israelis. I don't hate Palestinians. I don't hate Ukrainians. I don't hate Russians. People that hate Russians and love Ukrainians tell me that I'm being hateful when they hate one of the two countries. Israelis that hate Palestinians, they'll say that I'm being anti-Semitic when they hate Palestinians. I don't hate Palestinians and I don't hate Israelis, yet I'm the hateful one because I don't hate as much as them. I mean, it's like you have every right to feel how you want to feel in your country, and I have every right to feel how I feel. My taxpayer dollars are funding it, and in return, I get hate speech laws, and the media turns on you, but you're not allowed to say the media turned on you because that in itself is anti-Semitic. You know, it's like that's what's going on. I just find it fascinating. You know, I literally don't hate any country. Like, I think there's awesome Asians. I think there's awesome Palestinians. I think there's awesome Israelis. I think there's awesome Canadians. I'm a man of the world in a sense. I mean, I love my country, but it's like, I like great people. It's like, I'm single right now, but it's like with women, it's like, you know, it's just like if someone's pleasant to talk to, they're pleasant to talk to. I don't really care where they came from. I'm not saying I'm going to marry them. I'm just saying it's like I don't have a hateful bone in my body to hate a whole group of people. Like, that's just not how I'm built. I judge individuals based on who they are. With that being said, I also talk about race to the point where some people would call me hateful. Give you an example. Trevor Noah came out recently and started saying, you know, look how great Finland is, essentially. I mean, he made a talking point that used to be just the far right talking point or whatever. Trevor Noah said, when it comes to integration and segregation, what I noticed is Finland is super homogenous and it's awesome. And he's like, maybe that's better. That's what he was saying. And it's like, because he's half black or whatever, he's allowed to say that, and nobody really cares that much because it's like, you know, he's black. He could say, yeah, I want to keep to my own or whatever. But when you're mixed, you know, you kind of see it from both sides, and the world could be tricky because it's like, you know, sometimes it's like you don't fit in anywhere. And it's like, I have sympathy. I mean, I'm multiple ethnicities. Most, like, I'm Italian, I'm Polish, I'm Czechoslovakian, I'm Puerto Rican. I don't feel left out or anything. I don't really care. I'm just saying, I get it, where it's like you're trying to figure out the world and you don't really fit in. But in general, it's like then right-wingers will call Trevor Noah racist. Look, he's being racist. I don't consider that racist. It's valid to point to Finland and compare it to non-homogeneous countries. And we're always told that everything just gets better. We intervened in that country and it's better. This is better. That's better. Maybe, but also maybe not, you know? And it's like, he's speculating that maybe things would be better in some cases if everything were like Finland, and everyone, oh, that's so terrible. That's so horrible. Is it really that bad to speculate on that? Because we're told, we live in a world now where 99% of history was the other way. 1% of the present is this way. It's not working really well. I'm not saying that's the reason, but there's a lot of reasons, and it's not working really well. You're not allowed to speculate that 99.9% of history had it right. No, we got it right. Everyone else got it wrong. It's like when I listen to politicians, every politician I listen to, even like the most based right-winger ever, they're idiots. They're idiots to me because I research, I study history, I listen to all the greats. Modern day politicians are stupid. Any left-winger that's like, oh, the founding fathers. Do you realize how inferior you are to the founding fathers? Like, some of these left-wing politicians, they look like, you know, what's that purple guy from McDonald's? I'm trying to think of his name. Grimace. They're shaped like Grimace. They haven't had an intelligent thought in their entire life. And they're like, the founding fathers. It's like, the best thing you do in your life won't be better than like the 10,000th best thing that the founding fathers came up. They were geniuses of philosophy, politics, social science, and their writing is incredible. You know, another person I referenced a lot, Booker T. Washington, incredible. Like, modern day people, like, oh, it's like, dude, Booker T. Washington was smarter than every race activist today combined. Like, it's just like we've regressed so much, but you're not allowed to talk about it. You just have to be like, oh, it's just better now. If it's better now, why is every politician stupider than old politicians? I'm not saying I want to go back to that moment. I live in the present moment. It's just like, what I'm trying to say is I'm not offended by Trevor Noah speculating on this stuff, because this is a really honest conversation to have. It doesn't mean you're racist. It doesn't mean you hate people. You're questioning dogmas and what they tell you is a finite truth in the modern era that just isn't adding up. And there's a lot of those, like outside of Trump and Hillary, like they don't care if you talk about Trump and Biden. Like that's really low level, like, bottom of the barrel, like, thought process where it's like, sure, talk about Trump. You don't like Biden. You don't like Democrats. But that's not like a threat to the world order, because the world order is so much deeper than that. It's like, can you get 5 layers deeper and start thinking about actual things that aren't going to ever change? Well, if you do that, then they really turn on you, because it's like, whoa, you're not supposed to go there. But with that podcast, with the Mike Benz thing, I explained it. I think it's interesting. I think it's a good listen. And with all the other stuff, it's like, I'm just being patient, because, I think when I first started, and I've said this before recently, but I want to say it for inspiration to others as far as like how they think about stuff and carry themselves. Patience is important in this world, because I think when I first started, I wanted to rush everybody to agree with me. But not only do you learn more as you go on, like when I was in my 20s, I didn't know anything, but I was less patient. And it's like, I want everyone to agree with me, but I'm not even right. And then you get older and you start getting more right and understanding more. And it's like, then I was still trying to rush and be like, oh, I want people to agree with me. You can't force someone to agree with you. You can't force the population. There's a possibility. I mean, I hope not, but there's a possibility that I work for the next 10 years and in 15 years, people are just as brainwashed as they are today. And the right wing is just as fake opposition and the left wing is just as goofy. And, like whether I freak out or not, if that's the trajectory that the world's going to be, then that's how it is. So it's like, you got to do the most you can if you want to, but then you got to just leave it alone and be at peace with it. Because at the end of the day, you can't rush people to figure stuff out. And it's made my life a lot more enjoyable and made me a lot healthier, I think, because, I'm noticing certain things are changing. It just takes longer than, like, people are like 4 or 5 years behind, or in some cases 10, 40 years behind. So I believe a lot of this stuff will become popular. When it comes to what Trevor Noah was talking about, race, there's going to be a lot of people on the Republican side and the Democrat side who say, how dare you? You're racist. I can't believe you're talking about integration. And I can't believe you're talking about whatever, Finland and how homogenous they are. That's so racist. I don't think it is racist, and I don't even think that word's real. I think that it is a conversation that more and more people are going to have, because at the end of the day, it's like we live in a world now that is so diverse and multiracial, but double standards have been extraordinary to the point where people are not ready for the double standards to go away. Like they think that white people are just going to sit there and just be punching bags for their whole life and can't have any. It's like, if you're a black man and you feel really strongly about your race and you feel really alpha, why would you think that a white man would not be allowed to feel the same? Like, if that's how you are, that's not the archetype I am. I'm more trying to be myself and be great. Like, I am who I am, and I'm not ashamed of my ancestors. But in order to be great, I feel like I have to be great. I don't have to just sit as an anonymous Twitter poster being like, white people are awesome. What are you doing? Go do something great. If you want to prove that, be great. But it's like being a cheerleader for your race and not really contribute to anything is not impressive on any side. But with that being said, it's like people are so used to double standards where they're like, it's just like they think they could just say and do whatever, and everyone just has to like bow down. I was watching, I think it's Kendrick Lamar's Manager. Let me say that I think that Kendrick Lamar is one of the greatest rappers of this generation, probably of all time. His discography is incredible, and he's got a lot of really great music. With that being said, I'm not really a fan of his live performances. I've seen him live like 10 years ago after Good Kid, Mad City came out, and I thought it was terrible. It was one of the worst shows I've ever seen. Like, Kendrick Lamar at the time was my number one artist. I liked him more than any other artist. And I thought his show was the worst show I'd ever seen. Super Bowl, I thought it was the worst halftime show I've ever seen. And I like Kendrick Lamar. He's on my playlist. With that being said, his manager came out and he said, this performance, it wasn't for everybody. It was for us. It was for the nit. Like, he was basically like, we didn't do that for the world. We did it for a small group of people. Okay, that's fair, but it's like the Super Bowl is for the whole world. So if you do a show that you're purposely not trying to appeal to the whole world, and the whole world doesn't like it, why are you mad at it? So it's like, you should be like, yeah, we know you didn't like it. We don't care. That's cool. But then if people are trying to suggest people are racist, it's like they're racist if they don't like the show that you knew they weren't going to like, that you didn't want them to like. Like, this is what they think of other people. And I'm not saying just him, but it's like, I respect everybody doing what they want for what they consider their people, their race. But for how long do you think other people are just going to sit there and just be pathetic and be like total beta males and be like, you can walk all over me and I'll lick your shoe? And it's like, no, if you have those opinions about your group, then other people are going to have opinions about their group. And the double standards have been around for 30, 40 years. So there's a lot of liberal activists who are just not ready for them to go away. Like, when they go away, they're just like baffled that people feel that way. You know, I had some thoughts in my head that I didn't say out loud when I saw Spike Lee wear that shirt that said he had a sweat jacket or something at the dunk contest, and it said, you know, like 40 acres and a mule, we want our reparations or something like that. First of all, I thought it was funny because Mac McClung won the dunk contest. The best dunker is now white. And I was like, man, he must have been so mad at Mac McClung. And he probably wants a farm. Mac McClung, you owe Spike Lee a farm. So if you run into Spike Lee, make sure you give him a farm because you owe him. Jokes aside, I just thought that was funny. Jokes aside, it's like, okay, you want 40 acres and a mule. Okay, even though you're a multimillionaire. Okay, fair. Can I tell you what I want or no? Can I have racial demands or no? Can I talk about what? No. Can I wear a sweatshirt that says something else? No. One thing that it's like, if everybody gets 40 acres and a mule, do you think, like, what now in 5-10 years, what if the crime rates are still massively high? Are people allowed to be like, well, you know, do we have to like that or no? Does everybody have to be like, yeah, high crime rates are awesome? Or can people be like, you know, you want that, that's fair. We want to see a safer cities, you know, because if you go to Tokyo, they got even more people than LA and New York City, and the cities are safe. Why is that? Because Japanese people are not committing massive amounts of violent crime. It's just is what it, like, there's statistics on that. We can argue the social ramifications, etc. But it's like, does everyone have to like that? Do I have to like going into Baltimore and treating it like a war zone or no? I just got to like that, right? And I got to watch Rachel Maddow and I got to like every performance that's ever done. It's like, at a certain point, you know, I'm fine with people negotiating racial things and having opinions about their group, but it's like, is anyone else allowed to do it? Or do you just expect like everyone else to just completely have no opinion about it? And I have a lot of opinions about a lot of things, and it, you know, I'm willing to come to the table, not that I'm that important, but it's like, have these discussions, but I won't call you racist and you can't call me racist. Let's have a real deep dive in discussion and try to figure stuff out. Why are so many cities so destroyed? Do you think if certain groups left, do you think it would get better or worse? For example, it's like, if there's a really bad neighborhood, right, that's like really run down, a lot of crime, do you think if all the people that own stores, et cetera, and run businesses, like, do you think if they left, it would get better? Would you rebuild? Like, would Spike Lee be the mayor and be able to rebuild the city? Maybe. I mean, I don't really think so, but these are complex issues. But at the same time, it's like, a lot of the people that people get so mad at are the ones that are, in my view, keeping the neighborhoods afloat. I've been to really bad areas of New York City, and it's like the Indians and the people that run the grocery stores that have all the food, people are threatening to kill them like 10 times a day. Like, they could just leave and be like, I don't want to make money here anymore. Is that going to make the neighborhood better? Like, to me, that's not normal. I understand that it happens in certain parts of the country in the world, but it's like, it's not normal for me to like live in a neighborhood where the guy who owns the corner store is threatened 20 times a day. And like, but if that's like, can we talk about that or no? Because that's, you know, I mean, people still move there and bring yoga mats and stuff, but all I'm trying to say is I'm willing to have a conversation about this stuff, but it's got to be fair. It's got to be even keeled. And I think people have been brainwashed and programmed to think that only they can think these things, but no other race. Like, I've said this for a while. Colin Kaepernick, I support his right to kneel. I support his right to be an activist. I support his right to speak. I support his right to feel a certain way about his ethnicity or half of his genetics, you know, because I think he's mixed. But in general, Would Colin Kaepernick like a white guy that acts just like him? It would be his worst enemy. His worst enemy would be himself in another race, because he thinks his race can do that, or half of his race, because he is actually part white, I think. But anyone else doing that would be racist. I don't care what your race is. That just makes you annoying. If you were a white guy that felt the same way, it's also annoying. It's like, why would other people, why would you hate yourself in another race? Like, that just shows your true character. You're not honest. You're not allowing others. Can Asians do that? Can white people do that? Can, no, just you. And then another guy doing that would be the worst. Like, it would be his arch nemesis. You make white Colin Kaepernick doing the same things he does for black, for white, and put them in a room, they'd hate each other, And it's like, this is the hypocrisy and the double standards that people are annoyed with. I'm just analyzing it. I'm not advocating or whatever, that's not my style. I'm just an honest person. So I see this stuff happening all over the place. And every year, more and more people stop caring about the double standards and the propaganda. And the people that are caught in the double standards and have benefited from the double standards and propaganda are like shocked, like they saw a ghost when they see somebody like stand up for themselves, or see somebody that's like not falling for it. Like, I can't believe that. Because you went to a liberal university for 4 years, Deborah, and now you're like, and a lot of these liberal, I'm not saying this to be rude, I really have noticed this pattern. A lot of these liberal women, many of which who are white, they go to a liberal school for 4 years. Their heads filled with upside down worlds, anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-nature, just inverse politics, double standards, hypocrisy. And then they get out into the real world and they see Trump win an election, and then they go to therapy. I've seen this multiple times in the last week, where like all these liberal girls are like head cases. They literally go to like psychiatric and mental help, because they're like, I can't live in this world. Like, it's really bad what people are doing to people. They're destroying their brains, and then they can't like function in society, and then it ruins their whole life. So my prediction is, over the next 5 years, like, more and more people are not gonna play along to the double standards, and more people are going to come to the table. And that's what it takes. It takes people being honest. Even Trevor Noah, I can't stand Trevor Noah. He's one of my least favorite comedians. I don't think he's funny, and he's been annoying every time I see him. With that being said, him having that talk about Finland is brave. It's a very brave conversation. It's a very, the industry will not want you to have that conversation. And I think it's fair. But then he needs to start being fair to other people who want to have that conversation. It's like, how could you get mad at people saying what you're saying? And Trevor Noah is the same type, where he'll cry about all these things. Like, he just wants one race to bow down and have nothing and own, and then another one just gets to walk all over and say and do whatever they want with no disagreements at all. It's like, it's not gonna work. People are over that. So let me know what you think in the comments. I'll read a few and then I'll keep it moving. I'm just going to summarize this video. I got a little, I wouldn't even say off, because it's all kind of in the same ballpark. But, without getting in too much trouble, looking at history is a good way to see how the present moment happens. Even pre-World War II and before that, America getting involved and fighting nationalists and working with communists, it led to the world that we live in. Some people might like that. Many people might not. But that's just what happened. Like, we're living in a product of everything that has happened in the past, including the American State Department funding every other country that they can't control. It's what Mike Benz essentially said. It's what I'm saying. It's the truth. With what Trevor Noah said, because it's really not off topic, you could watch, Justin Malone and, Chad Jackson. They made a documentary. It's called Uncle Tom and Uncle Tom 2. And the second one, it gets into Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, the civil rights movement. And it's really interesting because it's like, Jesse Lee Peterson has talked about this too, because he grew up before that. And he said that, like, he thought it was better then than it is now. And that's really controversial, because he said he grew up on a plantation. And it's like, how could Jesse Lee Peterson think that? If you go into the history, it's not to say that everything is bad and nothing went for the better, but it's like, you were told that the whole world was healed from the civil rights movement. And if you look at the legislation that came after the civil rights movement, you could realize how much of that legislation has contributed to the world we live in now, the neighborhoods we live in now, the crime rates, the lack of family, the incentive to not have a family. Like, all of that was spurred from the legislation that came after the Martin Luther King speech or in the midst of it. And nobody knows that because we're told he's the greatest person that has ever lived ever. And if you question that, you're a racist. Here's what I said in my last video. Little Rock, Arkansas is one of the key moments of the civil rights movement where they did, I believe that was where they did integration into the schools. Shouldn't that be an amazing place right now? Shouldn't that be an awesome city, right? Little Rock, it's got to be great, right? Because they just righted all the wrongs and then racism died and then, flowers bloomed out of this. Little Rock is an incredibly dangerous city. Little Rock is not a destination that a lot of people want to go. And if you look at the statistics, it's not thriving. I'm not saying it's the worst place in the world, but it's definitely like it's not great right now. Why? I'm not saying that's because of why, but it's like everything they tell you, you just look at reality and it doesn't match up. It's like Philadelphia has the Liberty Bell. They just won the Super Bowl. That was cool. But other than that, Philadelphia has gone downhill over the last 10, 15 years. Like, a lot of these cities are going in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, around the world, Tokyo's not having these problems. Dubai is not having these problems. Dubai is multicultural. Dubai is diverse, yet they don't have this massive crime rate. What are we doing why can't we have a city that is as safe as Dubai? You could leave a $50,000 watch on a bench in Dubai and they won't even steal it. Like, that's how safe Dubai is, even though it's multicultural. Why? Why is Little Rock, Arkansas 1,000 times less safe than that? I don't know, but most people, they just want to, they don't want to look at history. I understand. It's like it's not good to look at it because then it's like everybody's going to yell at you. But the left is like, Martin Luther King would have been a liberal, and then the right says Martin Luther King would have been a conservative. He would have hated you. Like, this is the discussion people are having. I saw the other day some Democrat came out and called the right Hitler, and then based Mike Lee or whatever his name is on Twitter, he called the left Hitler, and it's like, everyone's calling each other Hitler. Everybody's calling each other MLK. This is most people's understanding of history. I'm MLK. No, I'm MLK. MLK would have liked Trump. MLK would have hated Trump. It's like, who knows? But at the end of the day, it's like, do you have any historical curiosity to actually like figure out what really happened versus what they told you happened? Because after that movement, the legislation has destroyed a lot of parts of the country. And, this is not even really that controversial to say, because if you look at certain statistics, like, most people are not saying my city's better, my community's better, we're doing much better. Like, 60 years later, we still have the Ferguson race riots. We still have BLM. So that tells me not all, but a large portion of Black America does not feel like they're thriving in this country. So if that moment was so good, why 50 years later are people still rioting, still complaining, because whether you're Black or white, even white people will say this country is not as good as it was 20 years ago. So everybody, liberals, if you polled liberals and said, is this country better than it was 10 years ago? They would all say no. If you polled Republicans, they would say no. Black people, white, like literally every race, every political group would say this country is going in the wrong direction at like probably a 90% clip. Why? Why, if we're doing everything right? We fought every righteous war. We overthrew every bad leader. We did everything right when it comes to race and gender, etc. Why does everybody think it's worse now? Are you allowed to ask that question? I'll ask that question. I'll also say more controversial stuff that I believe is true. When it comes to feminism, I believe the left wing are not just feminist. I believe they're literally like mentally ill. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The right wing, I think that they're feminist. Megyn Kelly said recently, she's like, women need to realize that you can work a job and men shouldn't hold you back, and you should be able to keep a job and be a boss girl and still have a guy like you. Sure, absolutely. Guys like success, guys like women who are pretty and doing well. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's not possible. And I'm not saying you should shame a woman for being successful. It's, we all live in this world whether you're black, whether you're white, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Muslim, Christian, if you're listening to my stream, like, we didn't ask for this world. We just grew up in it. So everybody's just doing their best for the most part. And some people are not doing their best, and you're the problem with the world. But in general, jokes aside, we're all just trying to figure it out and do what we can do. It's not, we didn't grow up in a perfect world, but in general, it's like that. Megyn Kelly's message to me is a feminist liberal message. It's like, be a boss girl. Personally, I'm not going to shame other people because I have my own life to live, and I'm a product of this world too. So I'm not doing everything that I would want to do because I've had to figure these things out as I go along. And this world it's not as easy to do all these things. But in general, it's like, I believe that God to man, man to woman, I believe that that's the right structure. I believe that women, before they joined the workforce, there was a reason for it. Not to say that it's all bad, but women didn't join the workforce in order to, be a feminist. They joined because men went to war to probably fight a war for the bankers, and they were told that it was for their country, but it probably led to their country's collapse. But in general, it's like they were at war, and then companies didn't want to fall apart because they sent the men to go fight for the bankers. So then the women joined the workforce. It's like they never gave you that just to give you that. And it's like, even politics, people will talk about the suffrage act, where women could vote. I understand it. That's freedom. That's great. Now you could be a part of the political equation. I'm just asking this in question form. Is it possible that women didn't want to be involved in everything? Is that possible? Is it possible in your head that it could have possibly been a better structure the other way? I'm not asking you to agree with it. I'm not saying you hate women or you want to take away your freedom. Are you willing to even ask yourself the question of, could it possibly have been better the other way? Why? Let me give you an example. It's like, women are free. Sure. But it's like, I don't make women do everything. Like, when I go to eat with a woman, I don't make her pay because I don't think I should. And I don't need to. I don't think women should be doing construction. If they do, it's pretty awesome. I think they have the right to want to do it, but it's like, go do this, go pour tar, go do that, go that. Like, it's exhausting. It's exhausting for people to do a million things. Politics is exhausting. If I meet a woman and she says, oh, you do politics, I'm not that into it. Do you know what I tell them? I don't say, oh, you should study, you should post memes, you should freak out all the time, you should pay attention, you should watch Fox News, you should get mad at liberals. I tell her, oh, that's cool. Should I? No, if you're not naturally inclined to be interested in it, no, I don't think you should. I don't think you should pay attention, and I don't think you should learn a little bit, but I it's not worth the emotion and the stress and the drama, because there's hundreds of millions of people on the left and the right, women and men, that get involved in politics. They spend their whole lives activists, angry, stressed, and they're not even right. They're not even right. The left, all these mad leftists, they're not even right. More than half of the Republican Party, whether they realize it or not, they're not even right. They're watching Greg Gutfeld. They're watching Mark Levin. They're so mad they're not even right. You're right about domestic issues in some cases, but you're missing the key to the puzzle because you watch fake opposition news on the network that got rid of Tucker Carlson for trying to tell you the truth about wars. Like, it's like you're investing all this time and you're not even right. Is it so bad to leave that to the guy? That's how it was back in the day. And here's the thing. If you look at voting patterns, it's like women vote more Democrat. Why? Do I believe they vote more Democrat? Well, one, they're getting brainwashed by the schools and they're getting emotionally disturbed. And I would love to see a statistic. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to be accurate, because I don't interact with that many liberals in my life. But anytime in the last couple, like, I'm not even joking, in the last couple of years, anytime I meet a chick that I like, that's so liberal that she ends up hating me, or they all are in therapy. They're all seeing psychiatric help. They're all either on pills or seeking mental help. I'm not joking. I'm not saying this as a jab. This isn't a haha got you. It makes me feel horrible. They're literally mentally ill. Like, every single one I've ever met, where it's like in the last 5 years. They're like, I remember, when I tried to date this girl one time, this is like early LA. I told her I didn't think Trump was that bad. And then she said, I don't want to see you because you like Trump. I said, I didn't say I liked him. I said, he's not that bad. She needed mental help. She was on pills. She saw some sort of psychiatrist and therapist. Every liberal chick that gets mad at my conservatism in the last 5 years, not a single one of them wasn't in psychiatric help. That's scary. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what is that? What's going on here? Not like, so What I'm trying to say in a long form is like we're told every move we've ever made was a better move, and you're not allowed to think otherwise. You're not allowed to come out and think any of these topics, be like, maybe that wasn't the best decision. Maybe that, because your life will be ruined because we're run by a bunch of globalist feminists in both parties. Nancy Mace will be like, I'm a feminist. I went to the same school as men. Cool, Nancy Mace. Cool. You know, have fun. You seem wonderful. But it's like, that's the Republican Party. I'm strong. I'm an independent woman. I'm Megyn Kelly. I can do the job the boys do. Sure. Absolutely. I'm sure you can. I'm glad you can. Don't care. Not trying to take anything from you. God bless you. But am I allowed to ask the question in this free country, were all of these decisions really the best decisions? Because the civil rights era led to some of the worst statistics for the Black community, and cities that are now like literally no-go zones that we were told, like, you know, peace and justice were served. Why are they no-go zones now? What happened? What's going on? Is anyone going to have a new civil rights movement to make these clean cities? No, because you can't have a conversation that would make them clean and safe cities because everybody will hate you in both parties. It's like, you know, it's like, yeah, there is a way to make our country safe. Dubai has done it, and they do it diversely. Tokyo has done it homogenously, and El Salvador has done it with a different ethnic group that was the #1 murder capital in the world. There are paths to success. Whether you go that way, or that way, there's ways to do it. But are we even allowed to talk about how to do it? If only women voted, the whole country would be Democrat. It's like, okay, so 80 years of that, now half the country's fat and on pharmacy pills. This is success. This is winning because we made all the right decisions, right? And you're not allowed to say otherwise. You're only allowed to say we messed up with Joe Biden. That's republicanism now. It's Joe Biden sucks. It's like, hey, are you a hot chick? Are you a guy that, you know, won't get out of line and has an IQ below 90? Here, you could be a Fox News contributor. I'm on Fox News selling my book, and Joe Biden is bad. Now we go to our Black contributor. Joe Biden's bad. Now we go to the white guy. Joe Biden's bad. Now we go to the hot chick that all the dads watching Fox News secretly think is hot. Joe Biden sucks. He's a scumbag. Now we go to this contributor. We need to start a war with Israel. Now we go back to this contributor. Oh, Joe Biden sucks. Like, that's like Republican programming. It's like 80 IQ level, like brain rot, where it's just like giving you the most basic, simplistic problems going on with our country, but never getting to the root of probably how they got to this country and what it would probably take to get them out of this country. It's like, you know, to fix this country, it's not Joe Biden sucks. It's like the Federal Reserve destroyed our money supply in 1913. We've been fighting wars for the last 100 years that are against our interests in most cases. We're overthrowing leaders that like their country and replacing them with leaders that hate our country. And we're doing the same thing in this country. And the only leaders that are allowed to be I don't know how to say this without coming across wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's the truth. The only leaders in the world right now that are allowed to be right-wing nationalists, they have to also be Zionists. You're not allowed to be a nationalist leader that's not a Zionist. And in most cases, you're not allowed to prioritize your own country above that. You have to be serving the Western foreign policy, whether it's Geert Wilders, whether it's Maloney, whether it's Javier Milei. They all have that in common because that's what America needs. They need to control both sides of the equation and make sure that no matter who wins the election, that someone always wins the election. And, you know, when Javier Milei was coming out, people were saying it was so hateful to speculate and stuff. And then he came out a year later and he wasn't disclosing his ethnicity. It's like he hid his ethnicity for a year. And then after he won the election, he came out and said it. I don't care what ethnicity you are, come out. But it is a little weird when you disclose it and everyone's calling you hateful for noticing his foreign policy. And then he comes out and says it. When it comes to Maloney, she's been doing some things that are, you know, seemingly not completely in lockstep with the Western world. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to replace her at some point. She's like a Tulsi Gabbard. She plays ball a lot, but I have noticed a few times where she's not totally playing ball now, which is different from when they elected her. So we'll see if she runs into trouble next election. But that's like the Western world right now. It's like, you know, you can like your country, but as long as you like this country also and prioritize this country and fight wars for this country and give money to this country and pass speech laws for this country, yeah, you can like your own country, but make sure speech laws for this country, speech laws for this group of people, call everybody hateful that notices, money for this country, reparations for this country. that's the world order we live in. It just is. And the whole left and right and black and white, like, everybody's fighting, but most people that are the most angry don't even understand what they're angry about. It's like whether they're black activists or white activists or left activists or right activists, and the left is mad at the right and the right is mad at the left, and there's a new riot in town. It's like the people that are orchestrating these, or the people that are behind these, or at the front of these, they're most of the times aimless. They're like, they're so far from the bullseye of what would help their ethnic group or help their people. It's sad. And that's the world we live in. But I wanted to talk about it today because I do think it's like the most interesting talking point. It's the hardest thing to talk about. And, this is how the world establishment kind of works. They incrementally get away. Let's just say and let me be clear. I'm not saying 100, 200 years ago, I'm not saying like everything was perfect. That's not what I'm saying. There were problems, there were issues, there were things that needed to be changed. I'm not suggesting it was all perfect then, but I'm just saying, if you look at how people thought religiously, conservatively, nature, the natural order of life, and what everyone believed to be pretty standard science in every group, incrementally, they got away from that. They got away from everything that was traditional. They got away from everything that was 99% of human history. And they told you as they incrementally got away from it with race, and got away from it with religion, and got away from it with gender roles, and got away from it with, politics, and got away from it with everything that they've done, banking system, everything. Incrementally, they just ran away from what it was. And every step of the way, they told you, this is better. You can't say it's not. This is better. You can't say it's not. This is better. You can't say it's not. This is better. This is better. This is better. This is better. And they've run up. So now the left is mentally ill. The right is left. And if anybody comes out and literally says a normal talking point, like from 20 years ago or 50 years ago, you're deemed insane. Somebody that I'm friends with and that I follow, Bryson Gray, he's very Christian. I would consider him a Bible thumper. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's just like, he really rocks the Bible. He has opinions that California voted for 20 years ago. California wouldn't even pass gay marriage. Literally, like 90% of the country thought what Bryson thinks now about homosexuality 30 years ago. You might disagree. You might be mad. You might be liberal. You might want people to do this. I'm not asking you what you want. I'm just saying the way he thinks about homosexuality was what literally like 90% of the country thought like 30, 40 years ago. Now, if he makes a comment about that, most Republicans get mad at them because they want to push homosexuality. It's like, here's the gay log cabin Republicans, where we like LGBT, but not the Q and A. And it's like, you have every right to feel that way, but like now the Republican Party is so liberal that they want to oust anybody. Well, Rick Grinnell's gay, so how could you disagree with him because he's gay and in power? I don't know. The Bible disagrees with it, but also most people also did 40 years ago, like Democrats and Republicans. No Democrat or Republican could have won doing what he's doing now. You can consider that progress, but all I'm saying is every step of the way, things changed, and we were told, this is progress, 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 this is progress. And now the left is so left that they need a psychiatrist. The right's so far left that they don't even realize that they're left. They think they're right wing and they're left wing, where it's like, I get it, but what comes, and then they're like, we can't have all these right wingers saying this stuff and that stuff. You mean the things that you thought 15 years ago? You mean the things that Democrats thought 25 years ago? You mean the things that every Christian literally believes? You mean the thing that like most religious people believe? Like, no, they're not even allowed in the big tent now because you're so far left. We need Nancy Mace with her big knockers at the top. I'm a feminist. Okay, cool. And I'm not making fun of the knockers. I'm just saying, I noticed them. How could you not? Probably shouldn't have brought it up, but I did because it's like, if you get them that big, people are going to notice. But I guess it's a compliment, Seems like a lovely lady. But it's like, I entered an all men's school that I was the first woman in the men's school. Isn't that what people are fighting against? It's like you're entering men's spaces. Isn't that the same as like a woman pretending or a guy pretending to be a woman playing sports? Now, an all men's school, you were the first woman. Okay. that's cool, I guess. I mean, that's like breaking down barriers, but it's also doing the same thing you're complaining about men doing in women's sports. But, I guess nobody's allowed to have their own stuff anymore because that's progress. It's like, this is the party we live in. Why does she get to have any opinion she wants? Because she, promotes Israel. That's the baseline in the Republican Party. It's not conservatism. It's not the Bible. It's not domestic policy. You could be Lindsey Graham, this person, that person. As long as you do everything you can for Israel, you're part of the club. The second you don't, yeah, your career's over, or you're Thomas Massey because you're so awesome that they can't, really do anything about it because you keep getting elected. But it's like, I don't know. I'm just having these conversations out loud. Probably shouldn't be, but I don't know. I guess my whole life is like, probably shouldn't have said that. Oh, well, I did and made a career out of it. Too bad, too late. But in general, it's like most people only think about now. The problem with the whole, and I'm not trying to dunk on boomers, but like every boomer's like, this country got destroyed when Obama got in. You think Barack Obama was the start of this country falling apart? He didn't help. Obama was a puppet. Obama wasn't even running the Obama administration. I mean, he was definitely infiltrating with certain ideas, but he didn't create these ideas. He didn't invent liberalism. He wasn't pumping it into the schools. They've been pumping it into the schools slowly, and then they turned on the floodgates to do it quickly. He didn't start it. I'm not asking you to like Obama, but it's like most Republicans are so dumbed down by Murdoch media and false opposition media that they literally think the country was awesome until Barack Obama. Like, they don't know anything about the wars. They don't know anything about the past. They haven't thought about the civil rights era at all. Martin Luther King would have been a Republican. Who knows what he would have been? But that's not the point. The point is, like, after his marches and after his speeches and after his great stuff, the legislation that they passed, including like incentivizing single motherhood, et cetera, and others, it has led to the decline of almost every city that they did it in. It's like they're all crime infested, run down. The schools are terrible. The country schools are worse. Like no one knows real history. They just know what they've been told. But what they don't realize is what they're being told is by the people who won the war. And in some cases, the people who won the war were literal communists. In some cases, the people who won the world literally hate you. They hate your religion. They hate your race. They hate your country. They hate your constitution. They hate you. When people who win wars hate you, you live in a world that seems like everything is against you. So it's like, yeah, this is not created in 2012. This has been deep seated for a while. And Biden did not create the inflation. Trump started the really big push to inflation, and he's not going to get rid of this inflation. Like, that's not how it works. We're never going back. We might be able to regress a little bit or progress, depending which way you look at it. We're never going back to pre-COVID prices. That's not how it works. You can't just shut down supply chains, print trillions of dollars, funnel tens of billions of taxpayer dollars to the pharmaceutical industry, call it Operation Warp Speed, have your brainwashed and brain dead supporters be like, he's saving the world because I like him so much. The elites are laughing at you. When you say Operation Warp Speed was a plan to save the world, they're like, ha, 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 ha. Look at that imbecile. Look at that buffoon. No wonder they control you. You're controllable. It's like, no, that's Operation Warp Speed and the COVID money print. It wasn't to save the world. It was to destroy the economy. It destroyed our ability to semi-fight against inflation. And then Biden just dug the hole bigger. Trump dug a 10-foot hole. Biden dug 15 more feet. And now you're like, oh, we're not going back. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, we could go back a little bit, but we're never going back to how the economy was. Never. What's going to happen? I don't know. I'm not pessimistic, but at a certain point, I'm not stressing about this because everyone's going to realize what I'm talking about eventually. I know they will. Might sound crazy, might sound too much, might sound rude. I'm not rude. I'm not hateful. Don't hate any race, any religion, any country. I really don't. I have no reason to. I don't. Why would I hate a whole country? I don't get it. But everyone's going to figure out what I'm talking about. Every year, more and more people figure it out. And in 5 years, it's going to be like mainstream conversation because it's just so obvious. And I think, with the internet, you have access to a lot of stuff and, including books. Like if you like reading books, you can go on Amazon and buy any book. Like it's pretty cool. Wasn't that what Amazon originally was anyway? It was just like a bookstore. But I love like thinking about something and just be able to order it. Anyway, let me know what you guys are thinking. I'm going to read a few comments and then I'm going to cut this off. I want to keep it under a minute. A minute, that's too late. An hour and 33 minutes. Let's see a few comments, and we'll see if anybody says anything interesting. Someone said Yuri was right. Eventually they'll figure it out. Yeah, Yuri Bezmenov. That's another brilliant just breakdown, because he was talking about brainwashing a nation and getting them to destabilize and destroy themselves. And that's what we're dealing with in the world. You have to be patient and calm, because we're not dealing with left versus right. I mean, kind of, but like, it's not like the left is wrong and the right is right and we need to fight them. Like, that's what people think. And then the left wingers think the left is right and the right is wrong and we need to fight them. I get why people think that. But the truth is there's not one mindset and one mindset. There's like 50,000 propaganda strains just tangling people's brain into a pretzel. And then on the other side, there's like 10,000. So it's like you got people that are brainwashed 50 different ways. It's like a knot. Imagine a knot that's been tied up that takes you 5 hours to untangle because it's tied 50 different ways. That's what's going on with propaganda. It's not the America versus Russia or liberals versus conservatives. They've been propagandizing every race, every religion, every country, men, women, left, right, tangle, straight. They've been doing this for so long that it's hard to tell somebody that's 60 that they didn't just get lied to with Obama. Their whole life is a lie. Like or at bare minimum, maybe your life's not a lie, but it's like you're reading the opinions of the people who won. You know what I'm saying? The people who lost, they don't get an opinion. Like with the Civil War, the reason they're tearing down the statues and stuff, it's like the Confederates lost the Civil War. You have no idea what they would have wrote if they would have won. Some people have ideas. Ron Paul claims that it wasn't even fought over slavery. I don't know as much as Ron Paul knows, but he said that for decades and people hated it. Like, when you win a war, you get to just pretend like you did everything for all the right reasons. You're like, I did everything right. We did everything for that reason. That's all we were doing. It wasn't selfish. It wasn't for the economy. It wasn't to tax the South. It wasn't to, take their sovereignty. We did it for all the right reasons. Maybe that's true. Or maybe it's not true. Maybe that's just what they said because they won. Same with all the wars. Like you're living in a world of the people who won. You just got to figure out who won. How, why, like these are all the questions. I know a lot because I'm curious and I'm not biased. So I am able to learn a lot, but also be thoughtful about my approach, because if it's not absolute, then, I don't run with it and really care that much about it. But it's like, who won the war? How did they win? Who helped them win? Who else won? Who did we ally with? Who got a country after the war? Who got it's like there's a lot of angles to all of these things, but what you learn in school is good guy, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. We won. Racism died, fascism died. Somehow communism went away, even though we helped them win the war. And now that communism went away in Russia, we're fighting Russia because we got along with the communists better than we got along with the nationalists. It's like, what? Why are we mad at the country that got rid of communism? We want them to have it again. Who were the communists? It's like, who were the Bolsheviks? What were they doing? Why were they okay with killing millions of Russians? Like, there has to be a reason. Why would they just be ethnically killing millions of people in a country? Why would they be starving people? Like, who was Lenin? Like, what is Marxism? What is Marxism-Leninism? What's the difference? Like, these are, if you're curious, you can figure all this stuff out. And it's like, we would probably, the people who control America and the world order, they would probably prefer a Lenin in power than a Putin. I'm not saying Putin's great. I'm not saying he's a hero. It's just, that's the truth. It's like, they would rather Lenin in power than Putin. Why? I don't know. I mean, I do know. I have some ideas, but this doesn't have to be a I tell you everything I think show. It could be you could think on your own and figure stuff out. But let me see. I'm going to read a few comments. Most people have no intellectual curiosity. I would say this. Yes, to some extent, but also this is where I kind of like took a fork in the road. People like to listen to other people and then get their entire worldview from other people. Like, for example, like when Huberman comes out, right? Like I've never listened to a Huberman podcast, and it's probably great. Like clearly he's popular for a reason, But for a while, there was no Andrew Huberman. And then all of a sudden he came up and every guy's like, I'm doing what Huberman does. I'm doing a cold plunge because Huberman's doing it. Huberman. I'm all for the inspiration. Cold plunges, I'm pretty sure, are healthy. So I'm not knocking the guy. He seems like a great guy. I have no disrespect towards him. But it's like a lot of people, some people want an Andrew Huberman to inspire them. Other people want to just be him and just do whatever he says and just not think about it at all and get their worldview from that. It's the same on the right wing. Like, how many right wingers really want to reread history and research and deep dive and question Fox News? And how many are just trying to listen to Greg Gutfeld and Mark Levin and watch a Dinesh D'Souza documentary every 4 years and then be like, that's my worldview. You know, Abraham Lincoln was Trump. Trump is Abraham Lincoln and the real racists are the left. You know, like it's easier to export your critical thinking to somebody else and be like, well, they did it. I wanted to go back and read and research all this stuff for myself. So at some point I thought to myself, how can I learn history when I wasn't alive at the time? And I thought a good start would be reading books from all world leaders and going back and trying to read that sort of stuff, because then I know that at least that's what they're saying versus what everyone else is saying about it. And whether it's Mao Zedong and Stalin and stuff, they have books, they have stuff out there, and the Communist Manifesto, etc. And when you read that stuff, it doesn't mean that's 100% true, but it's like you have a baseline to start challenging things that you're hearing. And the more that I read and the more that I researched and the more that I found out, I find that obviously liberals are wrong about almost everything, but most Republicans are wrong about everything. Like, most Republicans don't know anything. They've never researched it. Literally, their baseline is like American government schools, American propaganda, and whatever Dinesh D'Souza or Greg Gutfeld joked about, you know, or told them. And I no disrespect to Dinesh or Greg. It's just like, there's a difference between intellectual curiosity and actual intellectual curiosity that isn't just exporting all of your beliefs on somebody you trust. The reason I like Mike Benz is because Mike Benz, he's airtight. Some people will be like, he doesn't go far enough or he doesn't say enough. Everyone doesn't have to do everything for you. Mike Benz is inspirational. He connects so many dots. And then he says, I'm not saying this. I don't have enough evidence. I can't say what they did during COVID. All I could say is this, this, and this. And then it's up to you to connect the dots as you wish or to do more research. So I love Mike Benz's approach. And even what I'm doing, I'm not trying to tell people this was good or this was bad, because even in history, when it comes to the civil rights movement, we're told it's 100% good because it just seems racist to not say that it's 100% good. But the truth is, there's provably a lot of legislation that went in after it that has been ineffective. So is it possible to be like, this was good, but this wasn't good? He wasn't really who they say he was, but whatever. It's hard to dissect because things are nuanced. Everything's not black and white, but they want you to believe it's black and white because in order to keep you in this structure that they've had people in for a decade or decades now, probably half a century or longer, you need to believe everything that they say. This is black, this is white. This is black, this is white. Trump is bad, this is good. This is that, this is that. People that are brainwashed, you can't even say both parties are controlled. I slightly prefer Trump, but also I think he's a puppet. That offends them because they're like, but he's the enemy. He's the nemesis of the world. He's Donald Trump. Notice who the press and notice who the Democrats are trying to paint as the arch enemies of society. Donald Trump is like this person. Putin's like this person. This person's like they're doing he's the ultimate villain. There's no way around it. There's no nuance. He's bad. And we're supposed to believe that this is just a new phenomenon, but never before did this happen. Everything that they ever taught us is 100% true. I mean, that's what they're saying. I understand. And there's huge consequences to not agreeing with every aspect of that. But it's I've done my research on Belarus and Russia. And the truth is the Belarusian leader that they hate because he's allies with Putin, super conservative, didn't cave to COVID, told people to play hockey and use saunas and drink liquor. Who cares about COVID? And the media got so mad at it, right? And I'm like, oh, it's the world leader they hate the most is the only one who didn't cave to COVID lockdowns. Isn't that interesting? I'm not saying he's good. They say that the leader of Belarus is a dictator. Some journalist said, you're a dictator. And he said, okay, at least I'm not gay though. which in my opinion, comedically is hilarious. I mean, that could be like a joke on SNL. I find it really funny. I'm trying to think. He said a lot of actually really funny stuff. I've never been to Belarus. I have no connections there. I'm not Russian. I'm American, but it's like we hate that guy because that guy is friends with Putin, right? He doesn't care if you call him a dictator or not because he runs his country. What should we replace him with? You know, we should replace him with what? Some liberal, like, or Republican, like lesbian or something? Is that who should run Belarus? And it's like, the truth is, when it comes to places like Cuba and Russia and China to some extent, America has a sneaky way of taking over your country. I love America. I'm just being honest, just like Mike Benz was. America doesn't take over your country and say, we're going to control your country. They do it through NGOs. They do it through fake philanthropists. They take over countries covertly in a genius plot. So how do you stop America from taking over your country? Think about all the enemies of the press over the last couple of decades. Fidel Castro. Let me be clear. I'm not a Fidel Castro fan. I'm not Cuban. I'm not pro-communism. I'm actually vehemently against communism. I don't think it works very well or at all. With that being said, Fidel Castro is an enemy of the West because he's not allowing America in. He's going to such drastic measures to not allow America to control him that they drive old cars because they don't even want to do commerce to let America in their country. Did a lot of people suffer? Absolutely. Did it hurt some people? Yes, but that's the price he was willing to pay to not let America in. Who else doesn't let America in? Russia. They don't allow the NGOs in. So what happens? America starts a war with them. Belarus, same thing. He calls himself a dictator. He says, I don't care. Like, I'll do what it takes to control my country, and I'm not letting you in. It's like, that's what's going on in every part of the world. There's very few countries that are not in some ways controlled by America, and the ones that are demonized. I'm not, like, Fidel Castro and Putin have two different political philosophies and two different ways of running their country. I have neither. But this is the truth. That's why the press and the politicians of America hate those countries. They can't control them. Venezuela has nothing to do with their socialism. Republican propaganda outlets, aka all of them, will tell you, oh, we hate Venezuela because they're socialists. Guys, we don't care what a country is, socialist, communist, left-wing, right-wing. As long as we control them, we'll stay out of their business. You think do we really care? Are we in every country trying to save their country? We can't play Captain Save-A-Ho, for lack of a better term. We can't even save our own country, let alone every other country. They don't like Venezuela because they don't control the leader. And that leader is working with our adversaries. I believe in some cases, China, Iran, Russia are trying to get involved in Venezuela in some way. So our press will bring over the fake opposition CIA Western plant leader or whatever he is. I forget his name, Guidado or something like that. Whoever's not the guy who actually runs it. And they bring him to Congress one time and they bring him to a speech with Donald Trump, right? A foreign leader in State of the Union. Donald Trump goes, we have Venezuela's real leader right here, Jose Guaido or whatever his name is. And they all stand up and clap. They don't agree on anything. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Mike Pence, left and the right, everybody in unison like an orchestra cheering for the real leader of Venezuela because Trump's fighting socialism. Has nothing to do with socialism. That's the plant. That's the United States plant. Venezuela is not controlled by a plant right now. Here's what I'm saying. I don't agree with socialism, and I don't think it's good for Venezuela. But to be honest, I don't study Venezuela enough to really know or care. Yeah, Maduro's not controlled by America, and they're trying to replace him with someone is. But since when do we care? We'll destroy an entire country just to get rid of the leader. They don't care. Like, why would we care if Venezuela's socialist? If they go broke, they go broke. I'm concerned about the price of my eggs, my gas, my hyperinflation. Is there even gold bars in Fort Knox anymore? Or did they sell those or steal those? It's like, I'm not concerned with, a country I can't even pronounce in Africa. And I'm not saying I'm not literally like, I don't care about them, but it's like, how could I possibly believe that Trump and Nancy Pelosi care about a country in Africa when they can't even fix our own cities? Our own cities are declining. Our own country is experiencing a huge gap in wealth to the point where people can't afford everything. We're getting scammed by insurance, yet they're going to fix Mozambique with some weird US aid giving them circumcisions. That's really something that they were doing. Millions of dollars to Mozambique to give them circumcisions. I mean, that's disgusting and weird. It's just weird. Venezuela. Oh yeah, we care about Venezuela. How come not Chile? How come? Because one, I don't think there's as much geopolitical consequence, but I'm just saying. I mean, long story short, Maduro's not controlled by America. The other leader is. That's what it's about. This is not a pro-socialism rant. I don't like socialism. I'm just saying that's the truth. Someone said 22 foreign rappers being trained to destabilize youth. Is that true? I mean, dude, the rap industry is fascinating because there's so much control there. I want to give two examples real quick because it does relate to this. I've had meetings, whether people believe it or not, I've had meetings with major labels and I've had meetings with independent labels, including one of the most famous independent labels of all time. Both people tried to control what I was doing. When I didn't want to do it, they just lost interest. Like, it's that simple. Do this. And I'm like, I'll do it in my own way. Are you willing to work with me and make something organic, or do you just want me to be someone I'm not? Dress like this. Why would I dress like, why are you going to dress me up? Like, if you respect me as a man, even though I was in my younger 20s, it's like, why not work with me and I could dress better. You know what I'm saying? But it's still authentic, but we could like work together to do something. But I have to agree, I'm not going to wear something I wouldn't normally wear. They're not interested. Literally, as soon as I didn't want to dress in the clothes that they wanted me to wear, or I started asking questions about the contract, they're like, just ghosted me. Independent label, one of the most famous independent rap labels of all time, flew me out, paid for my round trip flight. They told me, stop rapping about politics. Rap about weed and women. And I'm like, you're a political rap label. You've literally put out the most successful political rappers of all time. One of my inspirations, think about this. I'm 20 at the time, probably like 24 years old. One of my favorite rap groups of all time, their record label flew me out. I'm living a dream. I've worked hard my whole life. My favorite independent record label, who put out the most political music of all time and the best political rap music, flew me to New York City just to tell me not to rap about politics. I didn't want to do it. They never talked to me again. Now let's go to podcasting. I had a meeting with, certain people in the industry, in politics. It's like, I ask a few questions about the contract, try to negotiate a few things. They're not interested. And you look at what's going on at Daily Wire right now. It's like, I believe personally that Crowder was not explaining the contract well. Like, I think he did it in a very disingenuous way with the Daily Wire stuff. Like, he was not explaining how much he was making and like what he had to do for it and like the ownership. There were parts of it that were really disingenuous to it. But at the end of the day, I think parts of it did age well, even though I will stand by this. I mean, he did it in kind of a sneaky, disingenuous way. They signed these contracts at Daily Wire where it's like, if you leave, you're under an NDA, you can't talk about it. Like, you just have to act like everything is great and you're on good terms when they're suing you, or you're in a lawsuit because Candace said this or this person said this. Like, it really is like a really crazy contract. It's like, so if you're not willing to play ball like that, a lot of these companies, even the ones you think that are not doing it, they're not interested in working with you. They're interested in working with people that they can control, put under an NDA, and sue into oblivion if they ever, want to talk about anything. It's like, it's crazy. I'm a free man. I've never signed an NDA. I've never signed a deal that prevented me. Like, there's people that they can never on their show, probably for the rest of their career, ever tell you what they really think about certain things, because an honest take on certain topics would violate an agreement they had, even though they lose all their stuff and then they can't even tell you that they lost it. Even them telling you they lost it is like a penalty or something. Reason I'm telling you this is someone said there's some USA aid connection to rappers. I believe it. I've seen it. I've seen it in politics. I've seen it in like people think when you say this that you're just like a washed up, oh, you're just jealous. It's like I've had a meeting with a major label. I've had a meeting with the biggest independent record label, and they both told me to do something. I didn't do it. They cut you off. It's how it works. That's why I'm so grateful to be here, because it's like I have the last laugh. I did everything I said I was going to do. I didn't take a corporate backing. I didn't need a billionaire funding me. And it's like now this is why I get bad press, because they can't control me. If the right-wing press, which is really the Zionist press, but you're not allowed to say that, but that's what it is. If you are not 100% controllable, they will try to control you first, invite you on a trip to a foreign country, usually. And then it's like, if you're not playing complete ball, then it's like they go to the next phase, which is let's try to make everybody hate him through our media connections. Let's blacklist him silently and smear his character publicly. These are the games that they play. There's so many games being played behind the scenes. With rap music, it was absolutely infiltrated. I mean, if you look at, I'm a huge hip hop fan. I love poetry. I love rhyming. I love performances. I love rap. It didn't start gangster. It really didn't. It started with a dance. It started with break beats. It started with party, with good vibes. And then at one point it became gangster. And there are smart, great rappers that you would like that said the same thing that I'm telling you now. And people probably said the same thing to them. Oh, you're just jealous of that rapper because you never got famous. That's not true. Like that's what people want you to think. So you shame these people that are talented that never got an opportunity. The reality is you go to these labels and they said, they were like, here's my record. And they go, do gangster rap, start being gangster. And he's like, but that's not my vibe. My vibe is, you know, I'm wise. I'm a wise man. I want to make wise music. And they're like, do the gangster thing. And then if they didn't do the gangster thing, the record labels went with other people. There's a famous interview on The Breakfast Club with a guy named Leor Cohen, who is a very famous record executive, and it's gone viral a lot, where Charlemagne asks him about like, why is there so much like violence in being put out through the record labels where like black people are talking about killing black people or whatever. And his answer is basically, I have mouths to feed. You know, I got money to make. I don't want to misquote it, but you can go find that interview if you want. And he's like, yeah, we do that. But, you know, I'm making money is what it is. So the question you got to ask yourself is like, did the chicken come first or did the egg come first? Like with a lot of these things, was it natural? Were black rappers and just rappers in general, but obviously most of them were black, especially at first. Were they just rapping about gangster stuff? Some people would be like, yeah, they were just doing that. The truth is like, not really though. You know, like it didn't start that way. Most rappers were not that way. And even gangster rappers like Slick Rick were storytelling. Slick Rick's a great rapper. He's telling stories. He's not promoting or glorifying it mostly. And then at a certain point, the labels came in and said, we are not signing people that aren't doing that. So part of it was natural, but most of it was artificial. And then, you know, young kids are impressionable. Then they raise a generation of pillheads. Then they raise a generation of drug addicts. Then they convince kids that it's cool to be gangster. Now, you know, most hoods think that's the way to make it. Because if you're in the hood, most people who make it out, now I'm not going to say all, but it's like one of them's an NBA player. One of them's a football player. One of them's a rapper. So these are the people you're idolizing. You know, it's probably better to idolize an athlete than a rapper. But it's like, these are the people that you're seeing, you're listening to that are making money, that are having success. So it's like within a couple generations, they've brainwashed, you know, inner city kids to think that it's cool to gangbang when gangbanging ends you up dead or in jail. And if you're lucky enough to gangbang and make it in the rap world, you still end up in jail because now the feds are hitting them with RICO charges. You know, the YMW Melly, you know, allegedly committed a murder, or he got charged with the murder of his friends or something. That's a whole case. He's in prison. Young Thug, I don't know if he's in prison. They threw him in prison. I don't know if he's going out. Tekashi 6ix9ine went to prison. I'm trying to think of the other guy recently. He's a famous rapper who's a really good rapper. I think it's Lil Durk. Maybe I'm wrong, but like he got hit on some sort of major charges. So it's like, even if you make it out against all odds and you're gangbanging and you're a multimillionaire and you're a great music artist, they'll still send you to jail. So it's like the message that they're sending the kids ends them up in jail. A lot of people have connected the private prisons and the financial incentive to do so, and the connection with that, which is an interesting one. But it's just, whatever way you spin it, it's just evil. It's just evil to push evil music on people. It's evil to trick inner city kids into thinking violence and gangbanging is cool. And I don't believe it's natural. I don't believe it's just what people wanted to do, because I literally you can trace the beginning of hip hop music. Like, you can literally trace it. It's like the first hip hop song was not violent. The second hip hop song was not violent. The first 100 hip hop songs had nothing to do with gangbanging. It literally was good vibes and, for the most part, a good message. It only became that in the 90s. It didn't happen organically. And now that I see how things work, it's like, if you watch Fox News, you have to understand you have to play a certain game to get on Fox News. Tucker Carlson showed the world, if you play this game, you can't be here. Candace Owens showed the world, if you play this game, you can't be here. They're beacons of this is the line. So it's like, at this point, I get that people like television, but Tucker Carlson was so much better than everyone else at Fox News. He got fired, and now people are like, well, I'll just settle for Greg Gutfeld and Mark Levin. No offense, but why? They just told you, if you ever tell people the truth, you can't stay. You could tell people inconsequential truths that don't really matter, but when you get to the deep truth that actually matters, you can't be here. So why would you want to watch the fake controlled opposition clown? Oh, liberals suck. Har, har, har. It's brainwashing you. It's brainwashing you to get like 80 IQ, 90 IQ, basic level babble. So in 5 years, your brain doesn't work properly. And you're like, I've been learning the truth. I've been watching Greg Gutfeld, and I get my foreign policy from Mark Levin, and then I tune into Ben Shapiro. It's like, okay, sure, I guess. But it's like, why, Fox is definitely better than MSNBC, but they just showed you. Like, I liked Tucker Carlson. I thought he was a good guy, and I don't watch TV, but like, I liked Tucker Carlson. And I knew 5 years ago, he's the best, he's the realest, he's the most outside the box. I was hoping that they would just keep him, but then they didn't, and they got rid of him. So it's like, okay, what's the point of watching a television station when there's someone that's number one, number two is so far behind Tucker Carlson, it's not even funny. And then they fire number one, and now number one's Greg Gutfeld, not by his own merit, but because they artificially sucked out Tucker Carlson, who's 50 times better than him. But now Greg Gutfeld, he has to be number one on TV because he's not Tucker. Why support someone that just took the best from you? It would be like, them not allowing Usain Bolt to run, and then it's just like, this guy's the fastest guy in the world. Well, the second fastest, technically, because they got rid of Greg Gutfeld, and Usain Bolt won the race by 50 steps. So it's like, he's not even really that fast in comparison. So why would I want to watch that? Is what it is. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you for listening. And I enjoy live streams like this because news is interesting. It's interesting, like everyday news, and I'll still do it. But I do like getting into the weeds of stuff, because I do think when you really are curious, and when you don't have hate in your heart, when you're biased or you have hate, it's hard to learn things. This is the funniest thing too. I'll use Ukraine and Russia and Israel and Palestine because it's so right now. But it's like, I literally don't hate either country, and I don't hate anyone. So I could look at what's going on and feel sad about everything. But, it's just like, wow, this is crazy. The people that call me hateful the most, they hate Palestinians. Like, you watch some of these Zionist Christians that are like obsessed with Fox News. They literally are fine with wiping out babies and women. Like, they're so brainwashed and mind controlled that they're justifying the assassination of a baby. Like, even that guy, Corey Compatore, I hate to say this, rest in peace, but if you go to Corey Compatore's Twitter account, the guy that got killed at the Trump rally, he was like that. He said one of the most disgusting things I've ever read. I was like, damn, that guy is trying to wipe out this entire group of people. Like, it was really foul. It was really messed up. It was something about what they should do to Gaza or Palestine. And it was like really dark and evil. And rest in peace. He said a lot of really amazing stuff too. A great father. I'm really sad he got killed. I'm not just I feel really bad, but it's like that guy was saying stuff like that. And I was like, I feel bad for everybody because it's like you're getting tricked into being like really messed up in the head, where it's like now you're willing to wipe out women and children. You're willing to just bomb people's areas. And then it's like, oh, you're being hateful. Me? I'm being hateful because I don't want any of that to happen. I'm being hateful because I think that there's a better solution, or at least like I can say that it's sad when it happens, even if there's not a better solution. Like, can I, like, I don't think it's okay to do that. Like, this is how messed up people are getting. Same with Ukraine and Russia. If I had it my way, nobody would die. I support Ukraine's right to defend themselves. Russia, it's not my country. But it's like people that hate Russians will tell me that I'm being hateful. Oh, you're just working with you hate. I don't hate Ukrainians. I like Ukrainians. It's just like people that have been brainwashed into being hateful, they perceive you not being hateful as hateful. Like that's it's really wild. Appreciate you guys. God bless you. God bless your family. God bless America. God bless the world. Let me know what you think in the comment sections. And I will have, like I said, I don't want to keep repeating it, but for those who just joined, I have a new studio. I'm going to go back to my better microphone. I'm going to have a backdrop. It's going to be semi set up probably within a week, but within 2-3 weeks, I should have like a full blown setup, better camera. I'm really trying to do more content, higher quality, better camera, and more editing. So the quality is going to go up, but also the quantity should go up. So quality and quantity going up should be good. I'm excited about it. I put a lot of work and investment into this. So I'm excited to upgrade stuff this year. I think it's only right. Appreciate you. God bless you. And let me know what you think. Hey, what's going on, my friends? Just a few ways to stay in touch and support if you'd like to. The first way is dreamrare.com. We have blue beanies, black beanies, pink hats, other colored hats, freedom versus tyranny shirts, stay blessed long sleeve, God is great long sleeve, and lots of more cool items coming soon. Dreamrare.com. Check out the shop to support. Everything's made in the United States. Handpicked by me. Patreon.com/raretalk for $5 a month. You can help support me, support the show. If you haven't noticed, unlike other channels,